I think we're live. I think. It's kind of, sort of. Kill the music, Curtis, if you can hear me. There we go. Hi, Lindsay.
Hi, Dan.
Wow, you got a... Wow, I'm usually the one that lags on the internet. You're the one that's lagging this time. Woof.
I'm sorry. Do I need to go get the Ethernet cable?
Let's see how it goes. So, how's Lindsay?
Lindsay is, as you can see, in a different background. I am visiting my dad. I am in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Yay!
But you said it wrong. It's Albuquerque. We said that off air.
Nope, it's Albuquerque. Okay, I call it Albuquerque. Because, no, we used to come here every Thanksgiving. So little 6-year-old Lindsay said that meant Albuquerque.
I like it. Now I want turkey. But anyway, so having a good trip?
So far, yeah. Yesterday, of course, when we were talking off air, was not so fun, but...
No? Are the boys with you? You know what? I forgot to turn my lights on. Hold on. Oh, you talk. There.
No, my children are not with me. I went to go visit my remaining alive parent, my dad, all on my own. So
your boy toy is the one taking care of the boys, huh?
Yes, I'm in visiting the side of my family I'm not allowed to say the last name of because we'll get kicked off the air.
I know what it is. Sad part is. So, all right. Well, I'm glad you're having a fantastic trip. We'll have to bear it. She's a little foggy on the screen. Just bear with it. You can still hear her just fine. By the way, I may have issues because they're running fiber down my street. So as I'm talking to you, they're in my front yard. They've dug massive holes, and I'm about ready to kill them because they're ruining my lawn, but they have right away. So we'll see what happens with that. All right. So we got a lot to talk about today. So we're going to start off by talking about a couple of bills. Angel just said I knew I should have taken a left turn at Albuquerque, Turkey, whatever. But we're gonna bring our boy on. Come on, yep. Curtis, jump back in. There he is. I got to switch my screen there. There he is. Hi, Curtis.
Hey.
Not just producing, he's hosting. Because we got a lot to talk about, and he's had a little bit more knowledge than I do, at least. I can't say for Lindsay. About a couple of bills. One is in Colorado, which is not good news. And one is in Texas, which I guess I'm going to say right now is also not good news, but remains to be seen. So, Curtis, why don't you go ahead and give us the update? Let's do Colorado first, just for the sake of argument.
Oh, this is a horrible bill. So Colorado passed a bill, and it was signed into law on May 16th by the governor of Colorado, where a parent who has a differing belief on if they have a trans child or if they have a child that thinks that they want to be trans, that parent is effectively cut out and made less than a parent, basically effectively terminating the rights, except for they still have to provide support. They basically built in provisions that would enable that court to be able to effectively terminate the rights of the parent, but still mandate support for this child. And on top of it, the bill also includes the ability for educators to basically backdoor all parents in allowing and getting this child transitioned if they so choose. So I know that, Dan, Lindsay, we've been kind of discussing this with some other groups that are both national and international. And they've indicated that we believe that a lawsuit's coming. So, and it looks like an injunction's probably going to be filed in federal court, and to see if they can enjoin the Colorado legislature and the Colorado governor from being able to basically enact the bill. into law.
Yeah, and again, for our purposes, the trans part of it is not part of this discussion, as far as I'm concerned. It's the parental rights side of it, right?
For us,
yeah, we're giving third parties, teachers in particular, ability to essentially terminate a parent's rights. That's I'm simplifying it drastically. I understand that there's a whole process and all that.
I don't know if I would say you're oversimplifying it at all. I don't think so. Because Troxel v. Granville, which is a famous Supreme Court case, dealt with a domestic relations case out of Washington State, where you had to give grandparents rights to visit with the decedent parent's children. Now, the decedent parent committed suicide, and it made
Can't use that word. Can't use that word.
Oh, sorry.
Unaliving.
Unalive. Sorry.
I know. It's the stupidest thing ever, because we all know what it means.
Okay, but the decedent parent unalived themselves, and their parents wanted to visit with the children. Now, the Supreme Court of the United States basically said, look, it's parental rights is paramount, not grandparents' rights. So I don't see how you can effectually undo it's 2025, so it's 102 years of jurisprudence spanning 25 plus cases that have well established the constitutional rights of parents to be able to raise their kids as they see fit. So what exactly is the... I just don't understand Colorado's thinking on this, because it's their opinion. Well, opinions, like you say, are a lot like assholes. Everyone's got one. I mean,
right.
It baffles me to no end that you can basically bypass a parent based on the best interest of the child. Okay, so let's pose these questions. Does a 16-year-old know what they can do? Does a 16-year-old know what is in their best interest? Here's another one. We've had multiple discussions with mental health providers that have said, okay, if a kid is struggling to identify themselves, find their own identity, what broke them in the first place? And why aren't we trying to fix that? Why aren't we trying to discover,
or at least look into
what caused the problem?
Yeah, exactly.
Now, let's go down let's say that let's go at it from a pro-trans approach. Why wouldn't you want the kid to get to the age of majority to make sure, go through puberty? That way, when you do transition, you have all of the adequately sized equipment to transition over into
either way.
So none of this is computing in my head. I struggle with it a lot, because the teachers and the courts are not the parents of these children. And what gives Colorado the right to think that they know what's best on how to raise a child, when, you know what, the majority of the United States isn't even where they're at right now? So that's my struggle with this, because how I raise my kid and how you raise your kid are two completely different things.
Right. Chime in, Lindsay.
Well, it's a lot like the standardized test model the Board of Education rolled out and said that all children will be tested on the same standards, as though they're all cookie cutter versions of each other. But no two kids necessarily think alike. That's like telling a fish that they're an idiot because they can't climb a tree. The government would be doing the same thing here. They would be saying all kids must be raised in the exact same manner. We decide what that manner is. And there's a great deal of potential of misuse for that, because the government could be taken over very easily by people that do not have your best interest in mind. I can think of a couple countries, Germany, Russia, North Korea, China, where the government came in and started making these rules. And if the government has control over that, then you can't protect your children. You have a right, you should have a right to protect your children, even from the government.
Yeah, I mean, those are my two big concerns. You're both kind of one, governmental overreach, right? It's those that support this bill and bills like it truly believe, because I've talked to some of them, that the government will always act in its citizens' best interests. Well, as Lindsay pointed out, there are numerous examples where they don't. In fact, I would argue they never do.
Well, what did Reagan said? The most dangerous words in the human language is "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." And then Gerald Ford has a very good quote, says, never trust, if you think the American government has your best interest in hand, go talk to the American Indian.
Yeah, great point, right? And, so that's one issue that I have. And the other side of it is just the general parental rights, right? As Curtis mentioned. We have a fundamental belief in this country. Supreme Court has stated it, but I think it's inherent in the Constitution, other ways, that parents know and will do, generally speaking, what's in the best interest of their children. And now with this bill, and there's others in other states like it, they're effectively saying, and by they I mean the state of Colorado, that they know better, teachers know better, potentially one parent knows better. I mean, we've talked about this before. This is going to set up parental alienation like you've never seen before, because what better weapon is there now to use, right? All you do is go into the judge and say, the kid wants to change from whatever way, right? And the kid might be 7 years old or 8 years old. I mean, we all know about the court case with California, right? At 7 or 8 years old, my big focus was, watching Scooby-Doo, not whether I was, a boy, girl, or anything in between. And yet,
my 8-year-old routinely thinks he's a cat. Should I have him neutered and have him go shit in the litter box?
Exactly, right? That's what scares me about this, because those that are supportive of trans rights, and again, I'm not making judgment one way or the other. I have my opinion, but I'm not sharing that because it's irrelevant to the conversation. Those that support trans rights in that sense, honestly, lose their argument with me when they go to a 7-year-old, an 8-year-old, because at the same time, they're saying that child can't drink, that child can't own a gun, that child, there's a whole list of things, right? They're not adults. They can't make a contract. They can't get a tattoo. They
can't consent to sex either. If you're too young to consent to sex, you're too young to change it, because you have no concept of what it means. The this law ruled across the country that children cannot, by nature of being children, cannot consent to an adult act to do with sex. So wouldn't we carry that? It would make sense that we would carry that same logic through to here, because they're children. They don't understand. They barely understand the difference between boys and girls. Other than physical. But if you have two, there's a little boy in my eldest's class who has long hair from the back or from the side. There's not enough physical difference yet to be able to tell boy or girl. So if that's being discussed at such a young age, 9 times out of 10, it's an adult who is pushing that idea onto them, because children that age typically don't think about what's between their legs or what's between their friends' legs.
And even if they did, though, they're not in a position to have an informed discussion, let alone decision. That's why we don't allow children to get tattoos at 8 years old. They don't realize the ramifications. If somebody is 20 years old or 25 and they want to go change their sex, I don't care. I'm so laissez-faire about it. Do whatever the hell you want. That's my viewpoint.
But wait till you're an adult.
I draw the line at exactly that, right? What now? You may define an adult as 21, 18. Some states it might be 16, whatever. Okay, that's where I'm drawing the line. If your state says you're not old enough to drink at 18, then how are you not mature, or how are you mature enough to make this decision? Because their argument about raising the drinking age is, well, 18-year-olds are not mature enough to be able to understand how to drink. Okay, well, then they can't be mature enough to understand that if you change your biology, there ain't no going back.
Well, also, Colorado's bill, well, now new law, says that you can transition up to 3 times. Before it was just once.
3?
I'm not even lying. Read it. I sent it to you. You can transition up to 3 times. So if you regret, you get buyer's remorse, you can transition back.
Which again, I'm not opposed to.
I'm okay, but I think about this in a very pragmatic way. It just doesn't compute because, okay, sure, but I don't know. Like it's not none of it.
Well, I mean, let me tell you, stepping away from the politics and all that side of it, just simply looking at it from the biological standpoint,
we are damaging this human.
You are damaging them permanently. There is no coming back from it, right?
No.
And that's not, by the way, that's science, right? That is detransitioners. If you listen to them, and I have, right? Because I respect the hell out of their position. They're the ones living with it. Not you, not me, not some scientist or some politician. They're the ones going through it. And when you listen to them and they realize I made a mistake, and that's okay. But you setting aside, again, the whole political mindset and all that, understanding what they're going through biologically, and they speak about it, that alone should give you pause.
How many attorneys do we talk to on a regular basis that have articulated to us that one of their deepest regrets is they focus too much on their career and not having kids because now they don't have a legacy?
I hear that not just from attorney, I hear from
a lot of folks.
I mean, that's what you're hearing, by the way, from a lot of women now in their late 30s and 40s. They focused on their career, and now
it's too late.
It's too late.
And it's like your biological clock is ticking. You want kids, but you get sucked into this, and it's like we're making final decisions that have very specific ramifications that cannot be undone.
And that have, for setting even that aside, Curtis, the long-term studies aren't done yet. They don't know what it's going to happen 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the road with this stuff. What happened to their life expectancy? I'm not saying one way or the other. They don't know. Anyone who's honest about it will tell you we don't know yet. We haven't experienced it. How do we know, right?
The Danish physician that is the leading scholar / physician on gender dysphoria says that if you wait until the children get to the age of majority, more than 90% of them are already saying, hey, they're just realizing, hey, I'm just gay. But guess what? It doesn't sterilize them. They can still have kids.
Right.
What, Papa? Ah! Why would you remove this?
Why? Because of political agendas. That's why.
And we were talking about permanent changes. The last time I got into the weeds on this, the youngest girl to ever get a double mastectomy was 12. They're giving double mastectomies to 12-year-olds who are probably going to outgrow it. What do you tell to your child that you were mutilated because your parents decided that was the good idea, or to let you pick when you were 12?
Or in Colorado, it was done so that mom could get custody of the kids, because now that's into play.
So, but still, a 12-year-old took off a body part that there was nothing wrong with it. And now within 6 months, she wanted them to put her back on. And the doctors were like, we can't put them back on. You can't take off a part of the body that has been removed.
Right. I mean, you can get implants and stuff, but it's not the same.
Yes, but that's proof that children change their mind, and that we shouldn't maybe be allowing this so young. I mean, 12. They weren't even done developing yet.
And again, because everybody wants to go into the weeds about, well, that means you hate transgenders. No. All I'm saying, at least in my instance, is I'm more concerned about them than the people that say I hate them. I genuinely care about them. I want them to understand the ramifications, the pluses, the minuses, the potential, issues down the road, all this stuff. An 8-year-old, 9-year-old, 12-year-old is not capable of understanding that. And we have lost that as a society. It's gone. It's like saying that an 8-year-old, like Lindsay mentioned earlier, can consent to adult activities. And in some states, they're pushing that forward. There's a bill in California. As long as it's within 10 years, it's okay. So if the person is 18 years old, then an 8-year-old, it didn't pass. There's a bill that was put in about a year ago about that. Yeah. I don't remember the information. I don't know if it actually got into bill status. There was somebody talking about it. But anyway. Right. But I mean, the fact that we're even having this conversation is insane to me, because if ultimately, my belief is society exists in general to protect children, to continue the species. Very simplistic way of putting it. We're doing everything to destroy it. And part of me sits here and goes, we have lost our minds. And what's going to happen, not in my lifetime, because I'm too old, but say in Lindsay's, in 20 years, Lindsay, you're going to see the ramifications. That's when they're going to show up. When you're my age, Lindsay, and Curtis, when you get to my age, you guys are the ones that are going to see what really happened. And I think they're going to look back and go, those people were nuts.
Because, does that mean we get to say, we told you so?
You'll get to say it. I think it won't happen in my lifetime. But yeah, I mean, it's absolute insanity. And again, on this particular bill, I will always default back to just look at it from the parental rights aspect. Because if you take just that approach, both sides should be opposed to it.
Well, and to that end, I think we've articulated pretty doggone well why a parent would want to stop this. It is long-term effects that are not in the best interest of the child at all. And we're not even focusing on the real issue. What's causing them to want to go down this path?
Well, it's, again, that goes to, and I hate to put it and couch it as a mental illness, but
there had to be a catalyst.
And in the sense that they should be going through therapy and all the appropriate things to help them come to an informed decision when they are of age. Like I've said, if you're 18, 20, 25, and you want to make this decision, great. But even to them, I would say, take a step back, your due diligence before you do it, because it is irreversible. They say, oh, we'll just stop taking the hormones. You give hormones to a 13-year-old boy to turn him into a girl, you are going to stop his testosterone at the time he needs it most. That is biological. There is no fixing that down the road. No amount of TRT is going to fix that. Sorry. And that's fact, but they don't want to have that discussion. I get very passionate about that side of it, because
even women need testosterone.
Yes. But it's just, I know, I could go an hour just on that, because it just pisses me off that politicians don't listen to reason. They're so worried about checking either the blue box or the red box, whichever side they're on, that they cannot step away from that and say, are we doing the right thing? Is this what's best long term? Or do we want to do something now that's going to give us headlines and get us votes? That's ultimately what it comes down to.
I think it's more about that they're so busy trying not to offend the 1% that they're pissing off everybody else. And society has rules, and not everyone fits within those rules because there's exceptions to all rules. But we should be making policy based on harming the least amount of people or doing the least amount of harm. And this hurts the kids, it hurts the parents. It hurts pretty much everybody involved. Even the parent, families. Even the parent that is supposedly doing this, you don't think that they might look back on it later and realize, oh, I shouldn't have done this. I wish someone had stopped me. Or
the kid gets pissed that they allowed it and goes to them. The kid's 30 years old and says, "You're out of my life forever because you should have protected me." You don't think that's not going to happen? I guarantee it's going to happen. Guarantee.
So someone on TikTok said that it's the mothers doing this, or the women that are pushing for this. In many cases, yes. But I truly believe that a lot of the push for this comes from either fictitious disorder or what is it used to be called Malchisms by proxy. The mothers are doing this either for attention, for their own medical ills, because if you look at the mothers who are pushing this, all of them have something wrong with them as well, be it depression, anxiety, hypochondrianism, any number of things. Or they're just saying this is another form of parental alienation just to get the kid away from dad. Yeah. I mean, I know that's happening with my friend TJ up in Washington. His ex-wife is claiming this for one of his daughters just to keep him out of her life. Because he was getting about this close to getting custody back. And then she pulled this out of nowhere. And now he's about, he went from this to like this.
I mean, my viewpoint on it is it doesn't matter who does it more, whether it's mothers or fathers. No matter who it is, it's wrong, right? That's why when they start introducing things like gender into it, it takes away from the discussion in my mind. I'm not disagreeing because I think primarily it is mothers that do it. At least that's what I'm seeing. My personal observation.
That's what I'm seeing, but I would be just as upset if fathers were doing this.
Exactly my point.
I don't think that children should not be used as weapons. First of all, this is the biggest problem I have with this. Is what I see this being used primarily as is another way for children to become footballs between I want to punish the other parent.
Exactly. That's my biggest concern.
And that's probably my biggest concern is that the children are going to suffer because the parents can't actually be freaking adults.
So Houston just said, I smell a 30-minute video coming from Dan. That video would never stay up. That's why you probably will never see it, because I have considered it. All right, we're about a half hour in, so love bomb time. Real quick, give us that heart, like, all that. Whoop, I hit the wrong goddamn one. There we go. Oh, I swore. Now we're definitely going to get banned. Show us some love. We're not normally, we like to have fun on this, but we're talking serious today. And also don't forget, if you're on TikTok and you gift a hat and mustache, Lindsay has to go. You missed the cue. You missed the cue.
I said yeah. There's a lag. I'm sorry.
All right. So let's shift focus to another really bad bill. This one is not law yet. This is one that they're debating as we're speaking in Texas. HB 3783 is the bill. In a very brief nutshell, what the bill is, and I know Curtis knows more about it than I do, but just in essence, they're arguing, those that are in favor of it, is that they want to ensure that professionals are overseeing things like, meaning therapists and all that, because they're adequately trained and not judges, and they want to factor in abuse and all that. it's a
Word
horrible
salad.
bill. It's word salad. It's a horrible bill. And we're going to dive into it a little bit. And then hopefully some of you guys will pick up your phones, open your emails, go look up the bill and oppose it because you need to. So Curtis, why don't you because you've done more research on this bill than I have, and I think probably Lindsay as well. Why don't you give us the more detailed version of the bill?
So HB 3783 out of Texas basically makes it so that let's say someone requests court-ordered family counseling, family therapy, and what they're attempting to do is to make it so that it's a lot easier to have reasons to deny that based on onesies and twosies, 1 and 2 incidences of really, they're saying domestic violence. They're also saying verbal abuse. I mean, the other part of the problem is they're not defining what
I was going to say. Verbal abuse is it's a nebulous term.
The other part of it is it says psychological harm and stuff like that. It's like, okay, guess what? Provide me a definition, because I think if you're going to prevent a parent from being able to see their child, or you're going to prevent a parent from being able to reunify with their children, you better have a tall damn thing to stop them. I mean, you know what? It's pretty clear when a parent has a substance abuse problem and won't get off the drugs, isn't it? I mean, it's pretty clear cut. Mm-hmm. That parent is choosing to do that. When you're now talking about the fact that our children we're talking about how we raise them, right? You know what? If someone doesn't like it, then I talk sternly to my kid. Okay, I'm 6'4", I'm 280 pounds, and I have a drill sergeant voice for days. Okay, I get direct, I get straight to the point, and I give no slack, none. But doesn't mean I don't ease up, and it doesn't mean that you get to tell me I don't get to do that with my kids, because you know what? If you were in my household and you'd see how my kids behave sometimes and some of the stuff that they would say to me or even to their mother, guess what? Mm-hmm. I have a right to do that. That's where my issue is with this.
I'd argue you have a responsibility to do that.
Correct. I mean, do you want my kids to go out into the world and be an asshats to all of you?
Well, that's effectively what we have, an entire generation, maybe two now, that are just like that.
Right. We don't need this.
And I blame, by the way, just for the record, because I know y'all going to jump on me, it's my generation that's to blame, the boomer generation. Because we raised our kids. We didn't want them to want for anything. We gave them whatever the hell they wanted. I didn't, but my generation did. So, yeah, you want to blame the boomers. In this case, you're actually right. I agree with you.
You know what? My parents used a belt on my rear end, so.
Well, you're older, you know. You're what gen are you? X, Z? I don't even.
I am.
We got a hat and mustache.
Yeehaw!
All right, sorry, I got to look for that.
I am an elder millennial. I am the first year the millennial.
Well, I will not hold it against you. That generation, I raised 6 of them, so I know.
I am an elder millennial too.
You know, but I mean, again, getting into this bill. Again, we're talking about they're not looking at the long-term ramifications, because I will even grant in some ways there might be some positive aspects to this bill. Things like people that are involved should be qualified. I don't think judges are qualified to decide whether a court, well, let me rephrase it. they're not. They can decide to say yes, maybe they need to have mental level individual or whatever, but to what level? They're not qualified for that. That is something a shrink has to do, right? So I can see where requiring things like qualifications and ensuring that it's done the right way, which is in there. I don't have a problem with that stuff. But when you then say that, and again, I'm simplifying things here. Well, if there's abuse, we can't have the parties involved go to therapy together. Why the F not? Because again, if it's physical abuse, if, Lindsay lays me out, okay, maybe that case, it shouldn't happen. But if I say to Lindsay, that blue shirt looks horrible, and she goes, oh, you just abused me. Come on, right? It's two entirely different things. But yet they don't see it that way. They lump it all together, right? Well, so any sign of abuse, there's going to be a problem.
Well, my biggest problems with this bill is first that it lacks clear definitions.
Exactly. Yeah.
Aligned parent, undue coercion, isolation, safety are not defined. And then aligned parent implies the court is already, I took notes. I pulled a Curtis. Aligned parent implies the court is already accepting one parent as the child's emotional default, potentially endorsing pathological alignment or alienation. And then the biggest problem I have with it, we just talked about it, is it ignores the ability or ignores the potential of false allegations. The bill states that if abuse is alleged, the victim, should not be ordered into joint counseling, which we just talked about. But there's no requirement for the allegation to be proven. It's just, I said so.
Alleged.
Alleged.
All it requires is an allegation.
So now we have a wide open door, thanks to those, no definitions, no clear definitions for strategic accusations. And I've learned that in cases where if abuse is alleged and like verbal abuse or something, and both people are in a room together, a actual trained therapist who knows what they're talking about could probably potentially see that one party is lying. But if you take those two people apart, you're missing half the equation, and it's easier to lie when you don't have to, when you're on your own. Like my children, when one of them is doing something that they're not supposed to do, they can usually get away with it if I'm interrogating one of them by themselves, but put them into a room together and I can very easily tell, okay, y'all are both lying.
Yeah, I mean, some other issues with it, like I'm trying to think of a way to phrase this, but it limits, like we were talking about alienation. One of the things that they try and do in cases of alienation is what's called reunification, right? Get the alienated child and the alienated parent back together. I went through this with my middle daughter, who was alienated from me for 2 years. And back in whatever year it was, 2001 or whatever, hadn't seen her for 2 years, won the case, and the judge was like, that's it, and they forced it. This bill can be used to prevent that. So now what do you do in that situation? Well, okay. So you want to argue that we can't put the child through that because it's not good for the child. Then how do you fix it? Because the only argument you can make is to say there's no such thing as alienation, parental alienation, which is the argument that they're making proponents for this bill. Well, it's been disproven, blah, blah, blah. But without... Well, they go after, they use the standard BS arguments like Gardner was a pedophile and all, it's all BS. But that's, again, it gets heard and it gets repeated, so it becomes reality. But if we're not going to give them the ability to implement reunification opportunities or programs, what are you going to do to fix it then? I did not read the bill, and I defer to you, Curtis. Is there anything in there that addresses that?
No. In fact, I think it flies in the face of constitutionality, and I think it violates every parental right that you could possibly have. As written, to Lindsay's point, there's no definitions, and when we talk about parental rights, in order to take them away, you have to have a minimum standard of clear and convincing evidence by strict scrutiny. Well, guess what? There's so much ambiguity in this law that it defers so much opinion to the individual judge, who is a human, who has their own belief systems.
The exact phrase that they use is the court can appoint anyone they believe to be qualified. So the judge believes someone is qualified. That's good enough to appoint them. They don't have to actually be qualified.
Which is scary, right? It's because technically I would argue I'm more qualified than any shrink that hasn't gone through it, because I went through it as a child and as a parent. I know more about parental alienation than anyone because I lived it. But you're going to tell me that some shrink who went to some rinky-dink college run by feminists?
But it gets worse, because if there are no, it specifically states that if the bill lets the court appoint anyone they believe is qualified, if no licensed counselor with a specified background is nearby, which means if you're in a little podunk town and you don't have a psychologist or a shrink, you might get, the school counselor is good enough.
And that's a lot of Texas.
Yeah, that's a lot of Texas, and trust me, I flew over most of it yesterday.
to get there. It's getting into the government overreaching again. And let's be clear here. Colorado is a blue state now. It was purple up until a couple cycles ago. It's blue. I don't believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Lindsay, because you live there. I don't believe Texas is a blue state. Am I correct in that?
I was just about to say, I hope you're going down the same road I'm thinking.
Go ahead with what?
Well,
I'm sure
it's pretty red, except for Austin, which we affectionately here call East California. And when we finally do secede, we'll build a wall around it and annex it back to them. But yeah, if you look at the map by county, it's almost completely red except for the major metropolitan areas. So Bexar County, Harris County, Travis County. I think it's actually Dallas County.
Yeah.
El Paso is surprisingly pretty red because
Fort Bliss.
But when you look at it overall, it's a red state.
But yeah, it's overall
it's a red state. And yet here they are essentially doing the exact same thing the blue states are as far as parental rights and stuff like that, right?
Well, they think they're doing, that's the problem, because I've talked to a couple of our local councilmen that are trying to push the same thing in Bexar County, or they're supporting the state bills. And they think they're coming at it, they're being proactive, but they're not.
They come at it from different things, different sides, but they end up at the same point, is my point, right?
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. I think if I had to guess, just knowing how the politics is played in Iowa, I think it comes down to dollars, and I think it comes down to the Bar Association.
Fair point. I'm not going to disagree with you.
Because I'll tell you this. The majority leader in the Iowa Senate, attorney, Republican, big time, like he gets donations, big donations all the time. You go down his ethics page, his ethics page is like 39 pages long for just the last reporting period. You go to some other rinky-dink senator from somewhere else, his reporting page is half a page for that same period. So when I look at it as a whole, you know what? If I know that the Bar Association has got him on speed dial, they pick up the phone, they say, "Hey, Jack, let's go. Tell me."
I'm not disagreeing with you, Curtis, but my point is still the same. either side is bought off by special interest in this case.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
But
Hands
yet,
down, bar none.
But the problem I have with the Republican Party, and I'm in the middle, is that they're couching this as they're going to protect family.
Oh,
horseshit.
That is horseshit.
It's a total BS. They're doing it to protect their pocketbooks. Real quick, Tiny Diny, Roar, Hat and Mustache.
Yeehaw.
That was Smartass that did it to us, Lindsay. I just want to stay on top of it because they're coming in fast and furious.
How did I know?
You know, we're talking about two different bills here that are for different things. But essentially, when you bring it all down, it's parental rights that we're talking about.
You still rob us of our parental rights.
Yeah, they're coming at it from different angles, but in the end, they're taking away parental rights. That's, in a nutshell, what I'm seeing. And it's both parties. So when people say to me, well, this party's going to do this, or that party's going to do that, or this one's better, or this one's worse, bullshit. Neither one of them cares. Neither one.
I have got some legislators that are bought into this wild idea. And that is abolishing marriage as a state recognized function, thereby abolishing divorce. Guess what?
Oh boy.
Now, here's the thing. When I pointed out that the greater than 90% of the civil docket in Iowa is domestic relations, they go, what? Why? And they go, wait a minute. They just looked at the judiciary's ask and they go, oh. And then on top of it, just they're investigating a misappropriation of $27 million of incorrectly spent funds out of the judiciary. They're going, what?
Where'd that go?
Well, guess what? Now the judiciary is asking for a big ask. They want to increase their pay to 75% of the federal bench. Okay, fine. The federal bench gets paid $247,400. Okay, fine. Do the 75% of that ends up being like 185 something. Well, guess what? Our bench right now is making only 160. Well, successful attorneys right now in the middle of Iowa are billing somewhere between $300 and $400 now an hour. If you're in the metro, you get to bill $450 to $500. Well, let's say you're billing somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 hours in a year. You're taking home somewhere between $300,000 and $500,000. Mm-hmm. What the hell is going on?
And that's if you have a bad accountant. If you got a good one, it's more.
No one wants to be on the bench that's worth a damn.
Why would they?
No, I wouldn't. If I was making a bank, why would I want to deal with that stupidity?
Yeah. But again, it goes back to, like you're talking about abolishing marriage. The state stuck its nose in that, right? Mm-hmm. When we first started as a country, it was the church who did marriage. But now we have to get a license to get married.
And do you know what it has? Do you know where its origins are?
I want to say Massachusetts.
Slavery.
Oh, in that perspective, yeah.
Yeah.
But again, we're going back to rights being taken away.
Right.
That's what we're keep coming back to, and why we need to oppose these bills. Wherever you stand on either side, all right, you say, sure, we should discredit parental alienation. All right, well, then why would you support this bill that's going to leave it up to a judge to decide whether it is parental alienation? And there's no definition of what it is. They're leaving so much gray area that there's nothing to stand on.
It literally lacks the strict scrutiny component.
Yeah, and again, we're effing around with our children in that case.
Yep.
It's a different scenario, but in the end, we're affecting our children for life, right? Mm-hmm. If you're going to, the biggest opposition to this bill from the people that I know are opposing it is the parental alienation aspect. right? There are people testifying, one right after the other today, about that as victims of PA. And okay, if we're not going to define it specifically, and to the best of my knowledge, you guys correct me, that's not specifically defined in Texas or in most states, or even acknowledge that it exists in some states, and we're going to create a bill that bans it as consideration, it's lunacy to me. So what happens to that kid, me, in the 1970s, who had a mother who did everything she could to disrupt my relationship with my father, blocked me from seeing him, did the same to my stepsister and her father, has affected both of us to this day, 50, 60 years later, and you're going to tell me, it doesn't exist? You're going to tell me my experience is a figment of my imagination, is essentially what you're telling me. And now you're going to put it in the law to say that, yeah, none of that happened. Lunacy.
Government sanctioned gaslighting.
And yet people want me to believe that the Republican Party is looking. Child, please. It's all about the money and only the money. And they don't care either side. And that's why we need to step back and look at it as a republic, a society, whatever, democracy. I know some are arguing, there's a debate going on between what is a democracy and a republic in some areas. It's just more and more rights are being taken away. And these two bills are proof of that. Different angles, different methodologies behind them, but in the end, they're doing the same thing.
Well, I think it's a multi-pronged issue with when you look at the different facets and the different layers. Look at prong one. Who profits off of the misery of others? Attorneys. Why would you want to stop your meal ticket? I mean, and people say that, we're not doing that, blah, 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 blah. Okay, fair enough. Let's examine that, and let's examine that for sure. Let's go down the rabbit hole, right? Okay, so what if we were to find, let's take Ohio's issue. Ohio, the National Parenting Organization did a study with Ohio where they determined that those states with the minimum visitation, or those counties with the minimum visitation schedule, had half of 50-50, had half the founded child abuse as others.
Yep. Per
capita. Why is that? Because mom is the number one abuser, and second close is mom's new boyfriend. And the reason is, it's not because they're abusive people. It's because they're overwhelmed and they need a break. You try handling a kid that is in chaos, basically lashing out, wanting some stability. Well, guess what? Send that kid over to dad's house, and guess what's going to happen? That kid's going to get some hardcore disability.
Get some stability.
He or she is going to realize, okay, I want the stability so badly. And the reality is guess what? 50-50 enables you to be able to tell if there's an issue with one of the kids. Because guess what? If I'm noticing that, wait a minute, Johnny or Jane is not acting themselves, what's going on? And guess what? We wonder how grooming takes place, or we wonder how bad stuff takes place. Guess what? You shelter the kid, of course, they're cut off from any reporting source or reporting ability.
Protection, in other words.
You want to stop this? You want to stop the insanity? Boom. 50-50 shared parenting. Put it in place. Make it about the kids, really. And stop making the court the damn referee. They got no business in it. Make a court do stuff that's actually legal and function.
Do what's in best interest of the children, their mantra.
They can focus on other things. They can focus on torts. Guess what? If I've got a minor squabble, do we really need a motion to sort this out? Oh, you guys can't communicate because you're always in here on emotion. No. One parent can't seem to stop being so litigious. Well, guess what? Stop going to court. Make court, you stop letting them hear the motion. Tell them to work it out.
Well, that would also mean the court's got to enforce their own orders, which they refuse to do.
Oh,
right.
Well.
I mean, my example is me, right? I mean, I filed well over a dozen motions over the years because the court never upheld its existing order, right? So you're forced to file more. And then it got into, see, the parents can't communicate. Well, it's not that the parents can't communicate. It's that one parent doesn't want to communicate and is throwing up barriers. You know, same thing could be said about my mother, right? Now, my situation was pre all family court reform and all that with my father. But, you know, her argument was he doesn't want to see you and all that stuff. And, you know, when you look at the Texas bill where, you know, they're basically going to support that kind of behavior now because they don't want, you know, like one of the things that's provisions in the bill is they don't want to isolate the child away so that they can figure out what's going on, right? I'm not sure I'm saying it exactly right, but they basically, because their feeling is the child could then be coached. Well, you're leaving them with, say, mom.
How do you know mom's not coaching them?
You think mom's not? Well, that's the point, right? They do believe, the ones that support this bill, that moms would never do that. Really? Come on.
That's the number one thing that they go to is reputation and character destruction.
Yeah. I mean, the argument I would make why you need to oppose this bill is the domestic violence industry supports it. That alone right there. It's as simple as that to me. Because
how many times have we covered this? The statistics. The statistics clearly show that the females are typically the aggressors.
They're the instigators.
They are. They perpetuate it.
In non-reciprocal domestic violence, it's 70% of the time we are the sole perpetrator and the instigator, and then in instances of reciprocal, we start it more often than we are the instigators more often than men.
Yeah, the only valid argument that I would grant them is that women will get hurt more in the long run. And that's biological, right? If both of them are hitting each other with fists,
but play stupid games, win stupid prizes.
The likelihood is the woman is going to get hurt more.
And be unreasonable.
You can't make that same argument with just anything else. The person holding the baseball bat is not going to do as much damage as the person driving the car.
Correct.
But it's just that using that as your argument, which is a small piece of it, to distract from the rest of the argument, which is what they do, is insanity, you know. And it's, again, we're getting back to all these, you know, these bills that go in. Let's kind of shift the talk a little bit. Well, before we do, let's do a heart bomb because we're approaching 5 o'clock. So I got to find the right thing. There it is. Show some love. This is not a fun show today by any means, but show us some love. Give us the like. Give us the heart. Share this because it ain't going far. I can tell on TikTok right now. I don't know the other numbers, but TikTok is throttling the crap out of this show.
It's my fault.
I think it's the baldness, the two of us. Which is, by the way, this is hilarious. So I got to share this with you guys. You don't know this yet. So I am getting bombarded by TikTok to join this live creators group. This special one. So they have different ones. Like this is like a top level one. And because I have a lot of followers, and I'm sitting there going, we used to get 10,000 views on our lives. Now we get a fraction of that. And you want me to jump in and be part of your super group? Go after yourselves. You know, it just blows my mind. But anyway, not to distract from that. But, you know, let's shift the focus a little bit. But still stay in this arena, which is... Oh, I missed one. Go ahead.
Steve says, how about a DIY series on how to build a house out of empty wine boxes?
That is good. I just saw it myself. That is very good. Good one, Steve. Now you made me the squirrel lost its nut. Shit, what was I going to talk about? Jump in and one of you save my ass because I'm totally blanking right now.
Well, you wanted to shift gears just slightly. Stay in this arena.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, where I wanted to kind of go with it is, we're talking about the attack on parental rights. And we're talking about it's both sides. What do we do moving forward? I mean, like the Texas bill, Colorado's a done deal now. We can't do anything change it. Texas, guys, go look up the bill. All right, which you can just go on Google, ChatGPT, any one of them. It's Texas HB 3783. Look at it. I don't even want you to listen to what we said. Just go read it yourself and then reach out to the legislators. If you want to help stop it, that's what you can do. But that's that bill. On the greater side of it, I'm curious what you guys think we can do, because we have two different states, two different colored states, if you catch my meaning with that. Neither one of them seems to be listening to the arguments against these bills. Texas House has already passed it. In that case, Colorado, it's law.
May 6th.
So what can we do? How do we fight this because it's not going to stop if we don't fight it.
No, but what I want to do is, and what I'll probably do when I get back to Texas, is I want to find out which of the senators or representatives authored it, and I want to try and see if they will answer me when I ask them what were they thinking. I mean, I'll be polite about it at first. When I ask, what were you hoping to gain by this? Because if we can figure out what they were trying to do with it, and then tell them, well, you're doing it wrong. Or at least that's how I would do it.
But it may be law by then. And then, that's what I guess where I want to go is, how do we prevent this from happening? So,
I think
like, for example, guys are just not stepping up. I'm sorry, guys, if you're listening, you're not stepping up enough. These bills come out. These bills come out. We talked earlier this year about things going on in Iowa, and we put out a call to action in Iowa, and you got ballpark 5,000 people to step in.
6,500.
And it had an effect.
150 legislators. And
yeah.
It had one.
It had an effect. We could stop these bills if we stopped sitting on the couch, whining, crying, pissing, and moaning, and started doing something.
But the other part of this is men get angry.
But they don't actually.
Well, they don't do anything with it.
Well, the problem I keep running into is I find people, women are awesome. Women, they'll email and they're really
they'll do
on
the work.
it, right? But when men do it, it's always or else. Like, what? You're ruining the relationship that way.
Mm-hmm.
That's my problem with men. They either they want to do it their way or no way. It's my way or the highway.
And I agree with you. And if there's a bill that has, let's say, 5 provisions, and there's just one they don't like, they want to kill the whole bill. They won't take the wins that you can get. They want
for an amendment
to steal from Trump. They want this big, beautiful bill in family law, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ain't ever going to happen. It is not going to happen. It's not going to happen in the state, and it sure as hell ain't going to happen on the federal level, because the federal government has nothing to do with it. It's state law that runs that. But I've seen guys sabotage bills because they weren't far enough along. We had it happen in New York, where 2 guys basically went after the shared parenting bill that we knew was going to pass if we could have got out of committee. And we were running into a wall on that. And rather than say it's not a perfect bill, and it wasn't, but it's something, they went and basically sided with the feminists. And it got thrown in my face. Well, your own guys are saying this is a bad bill, so why should I let it out of committee? Carl Heastie, who's now the head of the assembly in New York, right, looked me right in the eye. He said, you got two guys that just contacted me that are in your group telling me that this bill sucks. I look like a fool.
Well,
I was so mad at that time.
I'm gonna steal a phrase from Lindsay. How do you eat an elephant?
One bite at a time. Yep.
And here's the thing: why not take what you can get when you can get it? Why are we relegating ourselves to
that? And that's the conversation I want to have with people right now, is to say that, look, if we stop one of these bills, let's say we can stop the Texas bill, we all step up, we flood them with emails, phone calls, whatever, and stop this bill. It gives us cachet. So when people like Lindsay, myself, Curtis, a whole list of us go in and meet with legislators and say, we're from Reforging Families, we're speaking on behalf of men, whatever group you want to use, right? They look at us with a little bit more respect.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know you ran into this, Curtis, when you were in Iowa. It was you and about 50 women dressed up in their ridiculous outfits, right?
Yep.
When it went to the floor.
It was me in a blue suit.
Yeah. In New York, it was the same thing. It was be 100 to 150 women and 3 guys there.
Mm-hmm.
We look like idiots because they look at that and go, well, they got 150 to show up, or 50 or whatever. You got 2 or 1 or 3 or 4. And the guys, I'm so tired of hearing, I don't have the time, I can't get out of work, I don't make enough money, blah, 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 blah. It ain't going to change until you do something.
Well,
I had a guy earlier this week, and he pissed me off, I got to tell you, because I had put a post up on YouTube a couple weeks back where I shared a win. Pissed all over it. And I'm like, what's your problem, dude? Let him rant. And then I said to him, well, what have you done? Crickets. So you're complaining, you're jumping down my throat, and I didn't even have anything to do with this particular case. I just put it out there that it was a win. All that energy, and you can't pick up a phone and call a legislator. I don't have time for that. You just spent a half hour emailing me this pages long diatribe. What do you think is going to change? Well, and I'm like, and I get frustrated with it because I've seen this for 30 years. I've seen it time and again. Guys, we need to quit bitching and moaning and start doing. My favorite phrase, the one I actually have right here on my desk. Do or do not, there is no try, right? Master Yoda. What is it going to take before we start doing something? How many more rights are we going to lose as parents, men, parents, whatever, before we start doing something?
Too many if we don't unass our heads.
Well, one of the things that my dad always tells me is that the first step to a journey is you have to leave your house. You have to step out the door. Mm-hmm. And men won't step out the door. Oh, I don't want to go. Or, oh, I don't have time for that. Or, oh, it's too far. Okay, we'll take one step, then another step, baby steps. And suddenly you're sprinting. But you have to take that first step. And if you're not going to, then nothing is going to get changed. And I fight with guys all the time. I mean, we're all 3 of us up here are frustrated with it because we all deal with a version of it.
Well, we're frustrated because we see bills like Texas, which, Colorado got through. I'll be shocked the Texas one doesn't pass. I'll be shocked, to be honest with you.
But then there's not enough of us that are leaving the house. And I mean, I'm not a very good runner, but I feel sometimes like, and I'm sure Curtis and Dan feel like this too, sometimes it feels like we're the only ones sprinting.
Well, yes.
We're the only ones showing up at the track.
Well, so
some
here's
cases.
an interesting thing that I'll tell you is a lot of people go, oh, the greatest generation, the greatest generation, the greatest generation. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to tell you why they're the greatest generation. Because when they landed at Normandy on D-Day, they had two options. Climb the cliff, take out the machine gun nest, or lay down and die.
Or die. Yeah.
You know what? If you guys treated your lives like it was do or die, you had to show up. You had to play the game. You had to do what you had to do. Stop making excuses and just do. Do or do not. There is no try. Stop making excuses. You know what? If you got a complaint, bring a damn solution.
That's the other thing, right? They never, like, I actually went and pulled my content up that I posted a couple weeks ago just to kind of go through some of the comments. And, you know, there's this one Yahoo who self-proclaimed himself to be the be-all, end-all of the men's rights movement. Never even heard of the guy. He's the number one guy, but I've never heard of him, right? But then I've got a whole bunch of them, and I'll use one as an example. Oh, this is great, but it's too little, too late, especially for us younger bucks. Why should we bother trying? Well, guess what? I'm 62 years old. I started this fight when I was 32. I'm doing it. I have no reason to be doing it. And if everybody back then who was in the battle with me was still doing it, we might have had some change. But they get in when it affects them directly, right? When they're in family court about to lose their kids, then they get interested and then they disappear.
Oh, yeah. It's too much.
You know? And it's you know, much. It's we can't change it. We're never going to win. That's a defeatist attitude. You're right. And I say to them all the time, if you're going to look me in the eye and say we have no chance of winning, so why bother trying? You're right. We have no chance of winning because you refuse to do anything. You know,
I keep showing up trying to do something different. And every time I do something different, guess what happens?
You learn from it. Well, you also learn from it.
And I get new data. And guess what? That means that data, that information is knowledge, which equates to power, which then I can use to, okay, how do I need to adjust fire? How do I need to change this?
You know, the way we're going to win these battles is simply by showing up to them. It really does come down to that. If, you know, you might live in North Carolina like I do, or Iowa, or Curtis does, and say, what do I care what happens in Texas? Well, if it passes in Texas, how long do you think it'll be before it's in North Carolina and Iowa? The perfect example of that is the child support at conception. It's running through all the red states now. It's already passed in a few. Wait till you see next year. It's going to be universal, guaranteed. In the next couple, maybe not all next year, but in the next couple of years. That's the red states. You saw it with the blue states. You look at child support, all the laws, there's nuances, but they're all essentially the same. That rolled out like a wave in 74, 75, and then in 95, 96, 97, right? It just went, and men stood there and went, I guess we're not going to win the battle, so we're not going to do anything. Meanwhile, the feminist groups, thousands and thousands of emails, letters, phone calls. You know, back then there was no email. They showed up, and that's why they own our asses, because we don't show up. And that's why, guys, if you're not willing to fight a Colorado bill, a Texas bill, an Iowa bill, a North Carolina bill, trust me, you're right. Nothing is ever going to change.
No. And then the other thing is consider this. How many of them get so angry and so worked up that they go the other side and they burn the whole damn thing down?
Or they unalive themselves.
Right. And you get you get the path. Here's something else that Lindsay has said how many times? What's Einstein say about insanity?
Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. You're quoting all of my Lindsayisms today.
Well, I mean,
stealing them
I
on you.
pay attention. Like this isn't rocket science. You're 100% right on all the money. All we're doing is pigeonholing ourselves in general as a gender in this hole where guess what? You guys need to unass your heads. You need to look at it from a different point of view, and you need to start taking data points. If you don't, well, guess what? You're not going to learn anything. Not going to learn what you need to know. How many things have we been surprised on just the data that's come out, and you realize, oh, wait, that's not what I expected. Ooh. But that's why the data is important. Hey, it gets rid of cognitive dissonance. It gets rid of cognitive bias. It gets rid of confirmation bias. All of a sudden, guess what? Would you believe it that I've got a decent working relationship with the Iowa Bar Association now? And it's only taken me 3 years to do it.
It took time and effort and a lot of work on your
and
part.
Going back again and again and again and again and not being afraid to be told no. Guess what? They don't like what I have to say. Well, I don't like what you have to say all the time either, but guess what?
And that doesn't mean you go in screaming and yelling.
No.
You had productive conversations with them and got them basically to say, we're not going to oppose your bill, right? In a nutshell, that's what they did, which is a huge win, right? Mm-hmm. That's how we change this. It's, if you don't want to do it for yourself, because that's the kid, do it for your kid. Do you not love your children? Do you want your sons to go through what you're going through? That's the thing I say to myself all the time. The reason I'm doing this now at 62, I have no divorce, family court, none of that will ever affect me again. Ever. Mm-hmm. I could be off playing golf, sitting on the beach, retired. But I spend 8 to 12 hours a day fighting on behalf of men and boys. I do it because I do not want my sons going through this. I do not want my grandchildren going through this. I don't want your sons going through this. And if someone doesn't do it, nothing is going to change. And the funny thing is, because we're sounding like Dan Downers right now, but we are starting to see the pendulum shift. We are getting wins, more and more of them. And, that's why it upset me and why I wanted to shift to this, because when I post a win and I got guys shitting all over it because it's not enough or who cares? Well,
some progress is better than no progress.
Yeah. So if you're not going to accept that that's not a win because it's not the big, beautiful bill, you're basically saying you support feminism and the women's groups because they're owning you right now. And that's my point.
Sometimes you want to make progress in beaten yards. Absolutely. Every single day.
Sometimes it has to be in millimeters though, Curtis. And we got
absolutely that too. And guess what? Guess what? You stole my thunder. But here's the other thing that I love about it. You can't possibly compare yesterday to today because you had a totally different set of tasks that you had to set out and accomplish. And guess what? Progress is progress, even if it is only 1 millimeter. So win.
I use this with my fitness clients all the time. 1% better is still better.
Oh, right? Yeah.
And you start stacking 1%. If you stack 99 1% wins, you got 100% or 99%. We talked about this earlier in the year and late last year with the election results, where men determined the election, not just president, Congress, local level, every level, men determined it.
Yep.
We sent a message. Politicians heard it. Believe me, they did. But you know what's happening now? it's gone silent. And the politicians, at least the ones I'm talking, are going right back to where they were. And you're seeing it with bills like Texas and Colorado, right? Now, to be fair, the Republican Party in Colorado opposed that bill. And I believe it was universal opposition. Okay, you may not win every battle, but if we don't get in the battle, we're guaranteed to lose, right? And that's the point. We have to step up. We have to start taking action. You got to start ponying up too, if I may throw that in. If you can't donate $1 a year, this is the argument I've made many times before. $1 a year. If every man or person who cared about men ponied up $1 a year, we could change the laws within a decade.
Mm-hmm.
I truly believe that, because you find let's say a state. I'm going to use Iowa just as an example, just because, we're here. Let's say somebody in Iowa opposes the bill, and they may be the head opposition. We saw it in New York. There were two people, Deborah Glick, Carl Heastie. If I could have freaking put billboards up in their district, which back then was going to be about 10 grand because they weren't digital, it's $20,000. I guarantee you we would have shared parenting in New York right now. We were going to put one billboard right outside the Capitol, and they were going to give us a break. It would have been about $8,000. One billboard, we would have had that bill passed. I put up 1,000 of my own. You know how much total we got? About 1,500.
Perception is everything.
Perception is power.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have that right now. And that, I'm coming at this because we have bills like the Texas one that we need to stop. And what I'm seeing, who's opposing it? Women's groups. The main people that are in opposition to this bill are the women's groups who support men. Or who are, like, I know, for example, there's groups of women that are alienated from their children. Their husbands are trash. They are awesome women. Awesome women. They're in the trenches fighting right now. They drove from San Antonio to Austin, which, how far is that, Lindsay? Because I don't know.
It's, I don't know how many miles, but it'll take you about 3 hours to get there, depending on when you leave.
So they drove 3 hours today to go testify. That's more than 99.99% of men will ever do. And that's just one day.
I know that, Dan, you and I have discussed this quite a bit. Lindsay, we haven't discussed this as much. But I know that Dan and I spend a lot of our own money on this. We don't make out making a profit.
Yeah, no. Nor do I care to, by the way.
No.
I know you don't either.
But it's the idea that, no, I don't want my kids going through this. I don't want other kids to know what I knew as a kid and what my kids knew as a kid. And guess what? My ship has sailed. My kid, I have a 20-year-old and an 18-year-old. What am I doing? I'm not getting them. Not getting 50-50 of them. That ship sailed a long time ago.
Yeah. I always say to people, because I use Lindsay's kids as an example. What are they, 8 and 10, right?
8 and 11.
8 and 11. That's who I'm fighting for. And I've said that to people.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I said it this past weekend to someone. Well, why do you do what you're doing? Because of my, partner on my live show has 2 sons. I'm doing it for those 2 boys.
Yep.
And, I'm willing to catch the hate for them, because if I can help them, then my work is done. Right. Mm-hmm. And it's why I'll never quit doing this. I may slow down as I get older, and obviously
which you probably need to do anyway.
And obviously when the time comes that they dump my body in the ocean, because I'm getting buried in the ocean, then it'll be done. But in the meantime, I'm going to do what I can. I look at somebody like Warren Farrell, Aaron Pizzi. Aaron Pizzi is 86, 87 years old. She does what she can, which right now is not a lot compared to what she used to. But you know what? It's more than 99% of people are out there doing. Warren Farrell's mid-80s, still doing amazing work.
Mhm.
Those are my guiding lights. I look at them and go, well, shit, if Warren's 84 or whatever he is, and he's out doing podcasts, writing books and all that, who am I to complain about, having to spend a few hours writing a script for a video or whatever? Guys, pick up the phone. Get on your email. If you show up when bills come out in your state, get to the Capitol. Now, I realize in some parts of Texas that might be a 15-hour drive, but that doesn't mean you can't pick up the phone and meet with your representative locally. Doesn't mean you have to drive from El Paso to Austin, which is pretty far right, I would assume. I don't know.
Yeah, that's about a 8-hour, 10-hour drive.
So let's say you're in El Paso. To get to Austin might be a bit of a stretch. You know what? Pick up your phone. Call your local state rep's office. They all have local offices, usually more than one, depending on the counties they have, and say, I want to come in and meet with you tomorrow about HB 3783. And then go in and just say, I just want a half hour of your time. You're probably going to get an aide. And you know what? I've said this a million times before. The aides often are more powerful than the actual reps because they control everything, the flow of information. But it gets the message out. And trust me, that aide is going to tell the rep. Dan showed up. This guy was talking to me. He had some really good points to make. That's how you make a difference, guys. And until we all step up and do it. And by the way, shout out to all the women that are in Austin right now, fighting on behalf of fathers. And there are a lot of them, but not enough. Shout out to them. Claudia Alvalis in particular. That woman has gone above and beyond. And she was there. She drove from San Antonio to Austin today to testify. Imagine how many divorced fathers are there in San Antonio?
Lots.
If 10% of them had gone, you think this bill passes?
Oh,
not a chance.
No. Think about it. San Antonio is a military stronghold because you got Lackland and you also got
Lackland, Kelly, Randolph, Sam Houston, Camp, I forget. We have like 8 bases.
Yeah, it's a military stronghold. They lean to the right. Most of them have been divorced. I mean,
well, yeah, it's rampant in the military, right?
Right, because not very many people make very good military spouses because it's a lot and it's taxing.
Let me share you something because we're running out of time. This is something Claudia sent me this morning. Now, Claudia is a victim as a parent of parental alienation. Her ex-husband has alienated her children against her. As a woman, veteran, and mother, because she was in the military for 20 years, I think. As a woman, veteran, and mother, I would like to discuss HB 373 as it pertains to the military community. Pretty legit question there, or discussion to have. A person in opposition to the bill said to her, I can tell you there are no carve-outs for the military community as this bill applies to everyone, and shut her down. Part of the reason for that is she's an army of one, which we need an armies of 50, 100, 150, 500. That's how we get heard. Step up or shut up. I'm on a rant with this stuff lately because like I said, I've been hearing from guys that are just whining. And I say to them, what are you doing? Help us out.
Amounts of whining too. It's too much.
Do
Would
something.
You like cheese with your wine, gentlemen? That's what I always say.
Or do you want bills like Colorado to keep passing, and then your ex-wife can mutilate your child? All to get custody. And you will never see that child again until maybe they come find you as an adult. That's why you need to do it. All right. We're out of time pretty much. Boy, I went on a rant there, didn't I?
Dan got all fired up. He was the problem this time, not me.
I did warn you, to be fair, off air, I did warn you I was in a bad mood, right?
Yeah,
All I
you
did
did.
was stir the pot.
But again, my motivation is not to hurt feelings. Not that I really care much about fifis, but to stop bills like this. And we're talking two here. Trust me, there's bills in every state that you need to be looking at.
Mm-hmm.
And all I'm saying is I can't look at every state's bills, but when we put the word out, step up and take action. And we're going to get better at it. Some of it is our fault. We do a piss poor job of putting it out there. Guarantee you the three of us are going to fix that in the very near future.
We had a meeting about this.
Yeah. And we're going to have another one soon, right?
Right.
So, all right, Curtis, how can people follow you?
KBauer82 at YouTube. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I am on Snapchat. I am on X.
Snapchat?
Yeah. And I am not on TikTok.
Lindsay?
I am on all the social medias as Squirrel Girl 1988, except Facebook, when it's just Squirrel Girl. And it has a picture of my lovely face. So you'll know it's me.
And don't forget, if you're watching this live, you're on TikTok, you're on my channel because we can't get Boy Meets Squirrel working for some reason. Everywhere else you're watching it, it's Boy Meets Squirrel. Make sure you like, follow, subscribe. And if you want to find my other stuff, it's Men Need to Be Heard. Just Google it. Trust me, you'll find me. And all the hate that comes with it, which I relish, to be honest with you. All right, guys. Good show. Not as much fun as we usually have. So next week, we got to come up with a fun topic. I think we need something a little bit lighter.
And I never will be country born. I never will be unless I'm doing Victorian ankle photos.
I just saw the comment. We can't repeat it.
I have standards. Thank you. They're not very low. They're not very high but they are standards.
On that note, let's go ahead and wrap it up. See you guys next week.